Good morning and welcome. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes in about 3 minutes. While we're waiting to begin with our fabulous guest expert this morning, Avvy Go, let me remind you, please have pen and paper so you can take your own notes. You and I will repeat this when we start again. So in case you need to grab pen and paper or your laptop or any writing stuff, please prepare so you can take your own notes. Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in exactly 30 seconds or so. Okay, welcome everyone. Happy Friday. It's raining where I am in Toronto. Hope you're having a sunnier day than we are here, but it is promised to be warm today, so we're almost there for spring. My name is Debbie Douglas. I'm the Executive Director of OCASI. Welcome to OCASI's second town hall for May for frontline workers, income supports and immigration. Before I introduce you to our guest expert this morning, just a few housekeeping pieces for you. As I said at the top, please take notes during the call. You will notice that we're recording the meeting. It is really only for our own purposes. We will not be sending out transcripts of the call. It's for minute-taking purposes. We will not share the recording, as I said. That is because the information is changing so quickly from government that we don't want to send out anything that then the next day there's an update and that is changed. There's a handout provided. Actually, we have two handouts that's been provided in the handout box that you can download. So please do so. If you're having problems downloading, we will send it out to those of you, or to all of you who are registered, because we have your email addresses. You may use the chat box to ask questions. As Avvy is presenting, please feel free to start asking your questions. Once she is finished presenting, then we will go to a question and answer. We have 90 minutes together. Please, thank you for joining. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Avvy Go. Avvy is the director of the Chinese and Southeast Asian Legal Clinic. I was going to say of Ontario. They're Ontario-wide. They have an Ontario-wide mandate, but is located here in Toronto. Avvy is also a founding steering committee member of the Color of Poverty, Color of Change, a coalition that OCASI is also engaged with, concerned with issues of economic and racial justice. Please welcome Avvy Go. Avvy?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Debbie, for the introduction, and OCASI for asking me to participate in this webinar this morning. I hope everyone is staying safe. What I'm going to do, first of all, is to give you a brief overview of the various benefits that are available both at the federal and the provincial level right now for the COVID-19 related issues. And I need to note that this is general information only. If you have specific client cases, I encourage you to reach out to your local clinic to ask for more details. And also, I'm focusing mostly on income benefits for individuals, although I will briefly touch on the wage subsidies program, and as I'm sure many nonprofit organizations might be interested in finding out more. But in fact, there are many more other benefits and funding programs that the government has announced for different sectors, different employers. I don't have all the information, and I'm actually not familiar with many of these programs for businesses. So anyways, with that in mind, I'm going to start with the federal benefits, and then I'll talk about the provincial benefits. And for the federal benefits, I will focus on a number of things. First of all, the EI. Second, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, or CERB. The third one is the Canada Emergency Student Benefit that was announced a couple of days ago, CESB. And then next one is Canada Child Benefits, and then OAS, GIS. And then finally, the Temporary Wage Subsidy and the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program for organizations. And I'm going to assume that many of you are familiar with some of the basic things so that we can focus more on the new stuff. So first of all, around EI, I assume most people are, understand the basic qualification for EI. The basic qualification hasn't changed. What has changed is that for instance, for sick leave, sick benefits, right now, you will be able to get sick benefits without a medical certificate to apply. And for also for some people who are qualified to get EI, they will also be qualified for getting CERB. And that's for the period from March 15th to July 15th. So, I mean, because we're now already into May, so the question of like, do I apply for EI, CERB? I think that question kind of is no longer the issue. Basically, it's like if you have already applied for EI before, then you probably get EI first and then CERB. Right, if you're just doing it now, you should get the CERB first for $2,000. Once your CERB runs out, then you can go back to, EI. The regular kind of 55% of the income rate and the maximum 45 weeks, that still applies for EI. So I'm going to turn to CERB right now, and I'm sure, again, it's something that many of you by now should be familiar with. It's available for, at first, it was available for people who lost their job or lost their income due to COVID-19. Since then, they have kind of expanded the qualification a little bit. You can start, the qualification period start from March 15th. And right now, the government is looking at providing a maximum of 16 weeks. So it's around 4 months in CERB. And of course, that may change. We don't know. There is still the basic requirements that you have to have earned $5,000 in 2019 or the 12-month period before you apply. and they have specific requirements about what type of income is counted as towards that $5,000. So not every form of income is counted towards the $5,000. And then one of the new changes is that before, CERB is only available to people who have no income whatsoever. Now, if you make less than $1,000 before tax in a month, you can also get CERB. And right now, as of now, you must have a SIN number and you must be legally eligible to work in Canada to get CERB. So I don't know, again, if that will change, but for now, that is the requirement. But what I want to talk about is that, so I work in a legal clinic. So when CERB, when government first announced CERB, we got a lot of calls, like, it's like tons of calls from people who want to find out whether they could be eligible for CERB or not. And from these calls, we already knew at that time that some people who have applied for CERB may not qualify. And you may have heard in the news, like yesterday or the day before, I think Trudeau was asked about the question of, whether or not people who do not qualify for CERB have been receiving CERB and what they are going to do about it. And Trudeau did mention that they're going to clean up after the fact. And so you may start getting calls from people, not so much asking about how to apply, but how to repay CERB, right? And there are a number of situations where you may have to repay the CERB, for instance, and it's not because I don't think people are deliberately misrepresenting when they apply for CERB. Like, there is a lot of confusion, but also I think a lot of people just don't know at that time whether they qualify. And sometimes people, to no fault of their own, got the CERB and then later become not qualified because, for instance, you may end up earning more than $1,000 income, right? But when you apply, you don't know, right? You don't know that your employer is going to call you back to work. And sometimes we have also heard some cases in the news that people are getting CERB and EI at the same time, or they have applied and for some reason they are getting CERB from both EI, like Service Canada and CRA at the same time. So one thing to note is that CERB is taxable, but it's not withheld at the source. So when you get the check of $2,000, that's the entire amount. Like, they're not deducting the income, tax thing at the time, but you have to pay income tax later when you file your income tax. And CRA will give you a T4A slip later when you file. So if you think that you have to repay the CERB, then you better do it before you file income tax, right? Because otherwise you pay the whole amount back, and then you get a T4A say that you got this $2,000, right? And so it's better that you repay the amount before December 31st, 2020. And there are different ways to repay and depends on how you got it. Like, let's say you got the check, you haven't cashed it, just send it back, right? With a letter saying, hey, I don't need it anymore. But if you get it through direct deposit or online, then you may have to do it, repay it by, sort of doing through your online banking or CRA account and so on and so forth. One of the documents that you will get after the talk today is a two-pager that our clinic put together talking about the CERB repayment. So I encourage you to look at it. So I'm now going to turn to the CESB, the Canada Emergency Student Benefits, and that's a new thing that we knew it's coming, but the announcement for how to apply was made 2 days ago. And so it's for post-secondary students and recent graduates who are ineligible for CERB or EI. So if you are getting CERB, like if you're a student but you're getting CERB, then you're not going to get the CESB, right? So, and it includes students who have completed or ended their post-secondary studies in December 2019 or later, as well as students who have completed or expect to complete high school or expect to get their high school equivalency in 2020. And they have also applied for a post-secondary educational program that starts before February 1st, 2021. And to be eligible for CESB, you must either be looking for work but cannot find work due to COVID-19, or you are currently working during the COVID-19, but you have less than $1,000 in income before tax during the 4-week period you're applying. So in that sense, it's kind of similar to CERB. And so they have, again, it's like a 4-week kind of period. From the current eligibility period is from May 10th to June 6th, and the next period is June 7th to July 4th, and so on and so forth, for 4-week, up to August 2020. And so the basic amount is like $1,250, but for some people, they will get $750 more. If you have a disability or you have a dependent. And so there's a definition for that as well. It is included in the link that I have it's in the document that you see in the link to government COVID-19 support. One of the links is to the website where the definition is being provided, so you can go take a look as well. And you can, just like CERB, you apply for one eligibility period of a time. So you apply for one time for 4 weeks to get your $1,250 or your $2,000. And if your situation continues, then you apply for another 4 week at the next 4-week period, right? And make sure if you are able to work, for people who are able to work, they must be actively looking for work to be eligible for getting CESV. And just like CERB, CRA may ask you to provide information to find out whether you are eligible. So again, think about the repayment issue is important as well. Again, I'm not saying people deliberately mislead, but because the situation changed, so maybe at the time they apply, they are eligible, but when they get it, by the time the 4-week period is over, they make more than $1,000 or something like that, then they will not be eligible. So I'm going to now turn to the next one, and that is the Canada Child Benefits. So that's CCB. The basic eligibility for CCB hasn't changed. And of course, one of our biggest concerns from the clinic point of view is that many people with precarious status do not qualify for CCB, even if they have children, even if the children are Canadian born, they don't get CCB. That hasn't changed. So even with this COVID-19 thing, people who didn't qualify before, they're still not qualified. The only change is that if you are eligible for CCB, you will get an extra $300 through the CCB, starting with the May payment. And that's the only good thing about the CCB that I can say right now. So next, I want to talk about the OAS and GIS. That's another new announcement on May 12th. Seniors who qualify for OAS will be eligible for a one-time tax-free payment of $300. And those who are eligible for GIS will get an extra $200, one time only. So basically, if you are on OAS and GIS, you get an extra $500 this year. The next thing I wanted to touch on briefly is about the temporary wage subsidy program. And that's a subsidy program for employers, right? So if you are an ED, make sure you talk to your bookkeeper to apply. If you're a staff, then remind your ED to do that. It's this temporary wage subsidy program is like a 3-month measure. that will allow eligible employers to reduce the amount of payroll deductions that they are required to remit to CRA. So like when we get our checks, like our income tax and our paychecks, our employer will have to deduct from our paycheck, CCP, EI, sort of income tax and that kind of stuff, and that's called the payroll deductions. And so what this 10% temporary wage subsidies does is basically they allow the employer to not have to submit that amount for 3 months. And not-for-profit organizations can also qualify to get this if they have an existing business number and a payroll program with CRA as of March 18th, 2020. And so they will save some money. Basically, it's like a money saving kind of thing. And you don't have to make any application. All you need to do is talk to the bookkeeper, and they would know that they don't have to do the payroll deduction for those 3 months. So, so it's a great program for nonprofit. You get some money in the bank to cover other expenses, particularly things that when we're so many of us working remotely, we may spend more money on IT and so on. So I would encourage all agencies to do that. The last thing I want to cover from the federal program is the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. And that's like a subsidy of up to 75% of employee wages for up to 12 weeks, retroactive from March 15, 2020. But there are a lot of different requirements that you have to show that you have a significant drop in your revenue. I believe it's around like 30%. So, maybe not all the nonprofits would qualify. Our clinic certainly doesn't qualify. But it's something that you could look into if you do see a drop in revenue, right? So with that, I'm going to turn to the provincial benefits right now. And for that, I'm going to only cover 3 things. The first is around the Ontario Works ODSP type program. And then I'm going to talk about the Ontario Emergency Benefits. And the last thing I want to talk about benefits for seniors. So first, for people who are already on OW or ODSP, they can contact their caseworker to get additional benefits if they need something because of COVID-19, and they can get up to $100 if you're a single person or $200 for families. So for people who are not on OW or ODSP right now, you can apply for OW and ODSP, but the eligibility criteria remain the same. So basically, whatever those were the criteria before COVID-19, it's the same criteria that applies today, right? OW has their criteria, ODSP has their criteria. Some of the basic criteria deals with income and assets limit. Some of them deals, in the case of ODSP, you also have to meet the disability definition. And in all cases, both OW and ODSP, there's also an additional eligibility criteria with respect to the person's immigration status. And there are a lot of misunderstanding out there that think, like, a lot of people think, including those who work in the community sector, that only citizens and permanent residents can apply and be eligible for OW and ODSP. That is not true. While there are limitations on who can apply, it is much broader than just citizens and permanent residents, right? So in the regulations itself, it does not say who is eligible. It only says who is not eligible. So what it says about who is not eligible are visitors, secondly, tourists, and third of all, people who have a deportation order that has become enforceable. However, even with that, if your deportation order cannot be enforced for reasons beyond your control, you will still be eligible for OW and ODSV. So the question really is, who are visitors and tourists, right? And I often argue when I'm representing my clients is that there are many people who live in Canada who have lived here for years. They may have come initially as visitors, but for some reasons they stay on, their visitor visa has expired, they may have applied for refugee status, their refugee claim may have failed, whatever reasons, they are here now, and some of them may have worked before. These people, as far as I'm concerned, are not visitors and are not tourists. They don't even have visitor visa anymore in many of these cases. But even in some cases, they may have visitor visa. If they have applied for agency, if they have applied for a refugee claim, they will still qualify for OW and ODSV. So I think that the takeaway is that I think if you have a client who comes into you, they are not able to get served for whatever reason, or they're not able to get EI, they have no benefits right now, and they can't find a job because everything is shut down. I would still try to encourage them to apply for OW, unless it's very clear that they are just a tourist stuck in Canada. Well, even with that, I think there's an argument like if they're stuck here, they can't leave. At some point they stop becoming a tourist. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like a lot of the people who come to you, chances are they have lived here for a while. They're not really touring Canada anymore, right? So, at least try to explore with them whether they can get OW. And if not, if they try and they're not successful, then refer them to a local clinic. The second thing I want to talk about is the Ontario Emergency Assistance. So basically, it's a new thing for COVID-19 from the government of Ontario. If you are in an emergency situation and you live in Ontario, you may be eligible for emergency assistance. And the amount of money you get is typically not more than what you would have gotten if you are on OW. And the total number of days is 48 days, okay? And so the same eligibility criteria for the status, applies. It's like you're not a visitor or tourist. And when they talk about emergency situation, they kind of give some examples of what they mean. For example, an emergency could include situation where you have been affected by COVID-19. You are being evicted from your home, you are leaving, or you're about to leave an abusive relationship, or you're worried about your safety. So it's very broad, right? So once again, it's like I would encourage people to help clients apply first and see what happens, right? If they can get some extra money to help them through this period, it will be good, right? So the final thing I want to talk about is another thing that the Ontario government announced, actually even before the federal government announced the changes to OAS. The Ontario government announced that if you are receiving gains, like the guaranteed annual income system through Ontario, the province will double your payment, making it up to $166 per month for individuals and up to $332 per month for couples. And if you are a gains recipient, you will get this amount automatically for 6 months. And the first payment should have been made on April 24th. So basically, it's the same people who are getting the OAS, GIS, they should also be getting gains, and they will see an increase in the amount of gains that they get from the Ontario government. So that's all for me in terms of the overview, and I guess if you have any questions, I will see them or I'll hear them from Debbie.
Thank you, Avvy. Still taking a look at the chat box. I think we have a shy audience. Colleagues, please ask questions. Avvy, will you once again say if people apply for OW and or the emergency benefit and they are turned down because their client's immigration status is precarious, what can they do?
Well, they can ask for internal review. That's the first thing they have to do. And basically, you will email or talk to, well, so I don't know how your local office is receiving internal review right now. In Toronto, we have seen cases where they would be willing to even accept an internal review verbally, like, just call them and say, I'm filing an internal review. And in some cases, you can submit by email. I think it's just because a lot of them are the OW workers are not working in the office, so I don't know if faxing makes sense these days. But certainly you should talk to the same worker who reject the application and say you want to do an internal review. You have to do that within 10 days. And if that's still rejected, then you can file an appeal with the Social Benefits Tribunal.
Thank you very much. We do not have another question. OCASI staff, do you have a question for Avvy? If you need to take that to mean that you have been so clear about everything that you've presented, that folks received all of the information that they require. We've often gotten on the other town halls, we've often gotten questions about who qualifies for OAS or GIS. If one of the questions we had earlier this week is, if my parents are visiting Canada and they're now unable to return home, will they qualify for seniors benefits?
Okay, I can answer the OAS question, and that may be tied to the seniors benefits question. To qualify for OAS, you must have lived in Canada, like a resident of Canada, for at least 10 years. Then you'll get a partial OAS. And at the time you apply, you must have permanent resident status or citizenship status in Canada. So that means, like, within the 10 years, like previously, you may have other status, that's okay. But at the time you apply, you must be a PR or a citizen. And so if your parents are just visiting here, then, I assume that they are not permanent resident or senior or citizen in Canada, then I don't think they will qualify for OAS, assuming they don't have the status. The only question is, would they qualify for OW, right? So that gets into a number of different scenarios. Would OW consider your family income? Would they consider the status as visitors? Those are questions I think it's harder to understand, like harder to address without knowing the actual situation of the individual family.
Thank you. Participants, your chat box is in your right panel. Midway down your help box, it has sharing at the top, audio dashboard, attendees, polls, those kinds of things. If you click on your chat box, then you can do entire audience so I can see it, and you can ask your questions there. I'm not seeing any questions. I found them. I found the questions. Okay. Yes, the handouts are actually, the question is, are we going to send the handouts? The handouts are actually on your dashboard. If you're not able to download it, we will be emailing it out to everyone who is here. Okay, we have a very long question. I'll read it. Just a minute. Let me grab it. There is John. We're hearing from a colleague who is saying, I have a client who was working very part-time at 6 hours a week in a retirement home. She has not lost employment or hours. She has She has not lost employment or hours due to COVID-19. However, due to provincial order restricting people to choose only one place of employment, she's unable to look for additional work. Do any of the available benefits take this kind of situation into account?
Right. So I think assuming that the 6 hours per week make her just ineligible for CERB because of the $1,000 limit, the only thing I can think of right now is the what they call the hardship pay. Like the government has, both the federal and provincial government has committed to increase the wages of those who are working in essential services, like in the healthcare sector in particular. So I don't remember the exact amount, and that will be my sort of go-to, like, find out what is the amount of the hardship pay, the extra hardship pay that the healthcare providers are eligible to receive. So, so I think it's a question of they increase the wages, like, so 6 hours, if she's paid like $15 before, maybe now she'll get like, something else, like, $18 or $20. But I don't remember the exact dollar amount that both the federal and the provincial government has agreed to give out.
They're increasing it by $4 an hour.
Okay.
In Ontario. The next question, are law students graduating in April of 2020, so graduating last month, eligible for CESB?
If they are graduating right now, then I think they are eligible for CESB if they are looking for work and not able to find work, right? So it's the, that extra kind of requirement. So I think if you're graduating, if you're a law student graduating right now, chances are you'll be going into an articling position. So some students would have, most students, hopefully, would have secured an articling student before they even graduate from law school. If they're not able to secure an articling student, then there's an interesting question that I don't know the answer to, because many of them will be enrolled in what they call an LPP process, which is for people who cannot get articling positions. So whether or not they will be considered as people who are looking for a job, I don't know, right? So that will be an interesting question to look at. I would actually suggest the student to call Service Canada to apply by phone, explain the situation, and see if they are eligible. Because there's this, like, maybe I'm giving too much detail, but because of the like law students is different from other students. We have that articling requirements, and not all students get placements for article, but they have an alternative program for law students. So they're in a slightly different situation than other students. But I think by all means, I think these students should try to find out if they will be able to get CESB.
Yeah. When we talk about qualifying for things like CRB and we talk about the 5,000, are we talking net or gross? And I think that's probably a question for CRB. The government has not been specific about whether or not it was gross or net, actually, as far as I can recall.
I think it is, I can't remember whether they are specific, it's net or gross. You know what, I need to look at it to follow up whether it's net or gross. I only know that when you are working, like if you are working and you're still getting income, right, that 10,000 is the before tax. Like, sort of like for people who want to apply for CERB, but you're still working, sorry, not 10,000, the 1,000 per month is before tax. So whether or not the 5,000 is also before tax, probably is also before tax. The question actually, it's more likely to come up is people who are paid by cash, because we have a lot of clients who work in cash jobs. So they are not able to prove that they have earned more than 5,000 because they don't have a pay stub from their employers. So in those cases, what we have been telling clients to do, and if the clients in fact did make over $5,000, we are encouraging them to apply, but we are asking them to keep all the evidence they have about having worked. So for instance, if you work in the restaurant, a lot of the time you get a time schedule, like, what day you have to work. Some of the clients have their own schedule. Sometimes employers put the money in an envelope and write down like, $200, keep all the envelopes, just keep as much information as possible, so that if CRA decides to audit you, then you can at least provide some information. And at our clinic, we're committed to helping those clients if they get audited, because we think it's unfair to deny people CRB when they themselves are being, it's not their fault that the employers are not making the proper deductions.
Thank you. We have other questions around CESB. New immigrants, are they eligible? They graduated years ago abroad, but now they're in college here in Canada. Would they qualify for the CESB?
So if they are in college right now, it goes back to that eligibility. It doesn't matter how many degrees you've had before. It's okay. Right. The most important question is right now, are you a student right now, or are you about to graduate now? So yeah, if you are in a college, so it's post-secondary, right? So it's the going back to that requirement. I'll read it again. So basically, it's post-secondary students and recent graduates, right? Include students who have completed or ended the post-secondary studies in December 2019 or later, and students who have completed or expect to complete high school or expect to receive your high school equivalent in 2020 and have applied for a post-secondary educational program that starts before February 1st, 2021. So if you meet that definition, as a college student that's post-secondary, you will qualify.
Very good, thank you. In regards to overpaid, sorry, Chander, I'm not understanding your question. Would you, Chander Gosen, would you clarify, please? It's about repayment of overpayments. So the question isn't clear. Can a spouse who is a college student apply to CESB although her spouse is working?
They are not, when they're looking at CESB, they don't look at your marital status or whether you have family members who are working or not working. They are looking at whether you meet that definition. So if you're, post-secondary student, secondary student, you meet the definition, you want to work but cannot find work due to COVID-19, then you would qualify for CESB. The question about the spouse comes in, however, to see if you would get this extra $750, right? So I think if your spouse is working, it probably means that your spouse is not, or they may say that your spouse is not a dependent. So you may not get the extra $750. So I think we need to look at the question about how they define the dependent more carefully, because dependent does include spouse. But if your spouse is working, does that still count as your dependent? For the purpose of this, we have to look at that carefully.
Next question. What other benefits are there for OW or ODSP recipients who are senior newcomers? Will they qualify for the 300 OAS and 200 GIS?
So a lot of the seniors who are on ODSP or OW because they don't qualify for OAS, because they don't meet the 10-year residency requirement. So for that reason, they end up on the provincial social assistance program. So unfortunately, any benefits that are tied to OAS and GIS will not be available for people who are not on it, right? So, but if you are on ODSP OW, then you can get the extra $100 or the $200 for your family.
Yeah, thank you. Mohammed Idris points out that many seniors who are OW or ODSP or any other benefits actually do not speak English and often came to settlement agencies to get support. And now that the agencies are closed, what's happening? Mohammed, what we've been hearing from our member agencies, many are still working. They're doing work by phone. So your clients, so people are being proactive on calling their clients. So that the clients can continue to get the support. It means that new clients are not able to access your services, but certainly your existing clients should be able to get a hold of you, or you should be proactively calling them to see if they need any supports. Unfortunately, yes, there are many folks who are falling through the cracks because of language. We've just heard, as an aside, we've just heard from the federal government, from Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship, that they will be sending out information from CRA and Service Canada in about 10 languages other than English and French. So that should be coming out soon. I am sure that they will send it out through the umbrella organization, so your agencies will receive it from OCASI once we have them available. Amy, if that's already been said, just make a note in your answers as well. We keep getting notes about the handouts and difficulties downloading. Email it out to those of you on this call. The other question is, what about skilled workers who aren't able to find work? Can they apply for OW? And Avvy, when you answer this question, we've had these questions numerous times. It's often tied to the implications for the sponsor.
Okay. So let me answer it two ways. The first question is about the skilled worker. So assuming like the person meets the eligibility requirement, right? Sort of being not being a visitor or tourist, right? Or don't have the deportation order against them. Then the next question is, do they have any source of income? Because to apply for OW and ODSP, they also look at income, right? So maybe you're not working. However, if you have investment income, right? Then they have to look at how much is your investment income. And then the next another criteria is look at your asset, right? So OW, for instance, you can have no more than, if you're an individual person, you cannot have more than $10,000 asset, right? And asset covers a lot of things. So, I mean, it's possible that some skilled workers may qualify if they don't have income, they don't have asset more than 10,000, or depending on the family size, a little bit more. But if they don't meet the requirement, like because they have more income from somewhere else, or they have more asset, then they will not be able to get OW or ODSP. With respect to the sponsor, so let's say you are a sponsored immigrant yourself. For whatever reason, the sponsorship breakdown, you apply for OW and ODSP, and if you are still within the sponsorship undertaking period, then technically speaking, the government can go after the sponsor at some point in the later to ask the sponsor to pay back the amount of OW or ODSP that you collect from the provincial government. If you're a sponsor yourself, you've lost your job due to COVID or whatever, and then you're not able to fulfill the sponsorship undertaking, and somehow, let's say it's your parents, right? They come in and you were supporting them, but then you lost your job, you can't do that anymore. And your parents have to apply for OW or ODSP. As I said, at some point the OW or ODSP will come to you and said, pay us back. You always have a chance to negotiate with OW and ODSP, explaining the situations why, like, you've lost your job, you don't have income. Although it's unlikely they will waive the entire kind of debt, but you could enter into some kind of agreement with them to pay back maybe over a long installment period, or even reduce the debt, right? Because ODSP and OW have the discretion to do that.
Thank you. What about seniors who are permanent residents and are out of the country right now? Are they entitled to receive any of the senior benefits?
So it depends on the situation, right? I'm assuming I'm assuming that the person who is who hasn't started receiving the OAS, basically they haven't met the requirements, right? Then in that case, it probably will be harder for them to initiate the application when they are out of the country, right? And to apply for the any kind of provincial benefits, a lot of time, OW, ODSP, you have to be living in Ontario at that time. So again, it will be difficult for them to get any access. But if you're a senior who has already started to receive OAS and you are traveling and stuck in that country, you should continue to get OAS. There might be at some point in the future that the Service Canada will review your residency requirement, right? And say, hey, how come you're in I don't know, in Italy for 10 months or whatever, and then you're, well, it was locked down for 10 months, I can't get back in, you know what I mean? So, so it depends on the situation, depends on how long you are outside of the country. Sometimes Service Canada do an audit and they may kind of question your residency in Canada, but that's a question for the future, not right now. Right now, if you're out of the country, I think it's kind of hard for you to access those senior benefits that we're talking about, unless you're already on it.
Good. Another question about seniors, but these seniors are young enough to work. They were sponsored. They already have their PR and their SIN. Can they apply for CERB?
So it depends on whether they meet the requirements, right? So if these seniors were working last year, they made more than $5,000, and so they, can't work now because of COVID-19, then yeah, they should apply and they should get it.
Okay, another question around students. My client is a newcomer, have permanent resident status, and is a student registered in university, but had to postpone the acceptance to August due to COVID. Which benefit is he entitled to?
So the student.
The student has this. No, the student. So he's a new immigrant, registered in a post-sec in a university here, had to postpone because of COVID to August to start his course. Does he qualify? Does he qualify for CERB?
Qualify for CERB?
Or sorry, CSB.
CSB. So the student has never studied in Canada, but is about to enter post-secondary study. Then
That's correct.
Don't think so. I don't think. You know what? Okay, my question is whether or not the secondary has to be in Canada. I don't know the answer to the question because I don't know if they specify your secondary education has to be completed in Canada. Right?
Yeah. So is that something we can follow up with?
Sorry?
Is that something we can follow up with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can someone, sorry, can I ask a question? Is somebody taking notes so that I know what I need to follow up? or should I take notes myself?
No, Amy will take notes.
Okay.
So I have to read this because it's fairly long and I've just lost it. Someone wants to know if they can refer a client to you, Avvy.
Oh.
So this is someone who is working at $15 an hour full time. Because of COVID, their hours have been reduced. Can they, and I don't want to misrepresent the question. Okay, this is about EI, right? So their hours have been reduced from 35 to 15 hours per week. Would they be eligible for regular EI benefits?
Right. So I think what is implied in that question is that can this person quit their job to apply for EI? Because, you know,
no, not quit their jobs. That they're, instead of working 35 hours, their job has been reduced to 15 hours.
Right, but if you're making 15 hours a week at $15, right? So that's like how much money in a week?
It's like $225 or something.
Yeah, 225 is something. And what is the minimum?
So you're going from 525 to
the minimum that, or the maximum that,
which
you
is
can
less than
make
$1,000 a month.
Sorry? No, but he's talking
It
about
means that
EI. He's talking about EI,
yes,
right? So EI, you
yes.
can make income, but the maximum amount, let me check. Let me get this right away. Like that person will not get served because they're making more than 1,000, right? But for EI,
Just bear with us. Avvy does this. She's doing the research right away for you. Thank you all for attending the webinar. We have almost 220 of you on the line. Questions that Avvy has been unable to answer, we will note and do follow up as best as we can and send out to the group. Avvy, maybe this is one of the questions that we're going to follow up on.
yeah, so you can keep up to 50 cents of your benefits for every dollar you earn, up to 90% of your previous weekly earnings. So I can't really do the calculation in my head, but that is the calculation that you need to figure out.
Okay, and so this same question is that if they're able to get EI because of reduction in service, will EI see it as an interruption of service? And can that employee obtain a record of employment from the employer, although the relationship has not been severed, it's just the hours have just been reduced?
Yeah, so yeah, but if the hours have been reduced, then the employment has not severed, right? And that's where I get into, I think, you know, I was trying to kind of think maybe a little bit one step at the, the previous question, because you still have an employment relationship, right? So there's one thing to talk about, well, can you still get EI and keep the money that you earn? So that's one question. But the other question is that can you treat the employment as severed? And I mean, it's a harder question because in the one hand, it is true that you still have a relationship, it's just your hours have been reduced. You may or may not get EI, or you may or may not get CERB, depends on how much was the reduction. But if you want to treat the employment as severed, that means you are initiating that severance. Like, you are saying to your boss that, I used to work full time, now I'm only working 5 hours. I'm treating this employment as termination because of the very significant reduction in the employment change in the employment condition. I mean, if it's in a non-COVID-19 time, and that's the kind of argument sometimes we'll make, right? Because you can't expect someone to maintain, from 35 hours to 5 hours, that's a huge change, right? That's constructive dismissal, right? But another requirement to get EI is that EI will also ask you, is quitting your the reasonable alternative? Like, is there a reasonable alternative to quitting? And if there was no COVID-19, EI will expect you to go out and find another job before you quit. But now with COVID-19, then I think it raises a very interesting question, because the current person has no alternative. Like, you can't really find another job. I don't know if Service Canada will then say, well, then quitting is still not the alternative because that's the only job you can get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't want to mislead people to say that, you could just quit and expect to get EI. And for sure, if you quit your job, you will not be able to get CERB, right? So that's sort of a key requirement for CERB. So unfortunately, right now, I know it's very tough, but quitting may not be the most sensible or wise decision at this moment.
Yes, but isn't it true though, instead of EI, this person can apply for CERB because of the reduction in hours if they're making less than $1,000 per month?
If they are making less than $1,000 a month, but if they are not, right, then we can get, Yeah,
thank you. And I don't remember this, the Ontario government provided a one-time payment of $200 for families with children under 12. I don't recall.
That's for the OW and ODSP. If you're receiving OW and ODSP, you can get up to $200 per family, and also $100 if you're single.
I see. And this person is saying that many families did not receive it. So Palani, if they were on OW and ODSP already, they would have gotten it. That it was specific to those people on Ontario Works and ODSP. Do clients need to apply for the additional $300 on the CCB, or will it be automatically applied?
It should be automatic.
Okay. Okay, so this is about OW again, and this person is saying, Mike Scott is saying that he's very glad, Avvy, that you went over OW again. Following the last session, he relayed the information to his community partners, and a debate ensued. The messaging our local social services admin board is receiving from the province is that international students are considered visitors for the purposes of OW eligibility. What can they do?
I think that we should, it probably requires some systemic advocacy. And I know that, for instance, some of the legal clinics, including ISAC, is trying to reach out to the ministry to talk about this issue, about, who is visitor, who is not a visitor. So maybe it's something that maybe OCASI and our clinic can think about as to how to support the international students, because they are also not eligible for CESB right now. So they are in a very tough position.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So Mike, thanks for flagging that. It's an issue that we continue to run into, not only with international students, but with others as well who are not permanent residents or citizens. So yes, it's ongoing system advocacy work. Is the CCB a one-time payment that's only for May, or is it ongoing throughout the pandemic?
It's just one, the total amount is 300. I don't know if they are deviate up and, give you a small amount every month, or they're just giving you one amount in May that I'm not clear about, but it's just one $300 payment.
Okay. Another question, my client has to go back home to take care of her mom due to her surgery. She has to leave her job temporarily. Is she eligible for any of the benefits?
So is the client now in Canada or she's home? Like it's not, it's not clear to me.
She's back home.
She's already back home. Okay.
Yes.
She's already back home. Then I think I can't think of anything that she could apply for right now. Yeah.
Okay. My question is, for $300 for OAS and $200 for GIS recipients are one-time payments or monthly?
It's a one-time payment.
This person is saying, what about skilled workers who can't find work? Are they eligible for any of the income supports?
So I think I answered that question previously, right? So they may get OW, ODSP. Whether or not they are able to get CERB or EI will depend on their employment history in Canada, if they have any, and whether they meet the different requirements under those different programs. If they have children, maybe if they have children, make sure that they apply for CCB.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another question, can we refer clients to Avvy Go?
It depends.
Especially including those who may need help filling in applications.
Yeah, so let me explain a little bit about our clinic service. We provide services to low-income members of the Chinese, Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Laotian communities. And we cater our services to people who are non-English speaking, right? So, however, we do get calls from community agencies, and we do try to answer questions from community agencies workers. So, I mean, and we have an intake system. If you call on that day, someone will answer your phone and they will try to answer your question. But of course, if we can't expect to do a 90-minute session every time you call. So it's better it's a specific question about a particular case.
Yeah, and as well to use your local community legal clinic.
Yeah.
Who for the most part all do poverty law.
Yeah.
Do refugee claimants who have an SIN are permitted to work in Canada and who are allowed to work in Canada qualify for CERB?
In general, refugee claimant, when their claim is still in process, they are qualified, they are eligible to apply for a work permit. So I would strongly encourage, if you have clients who are refugee claimants, if they don't have a work permit yet, get one right away. So assuming that they have a work permit and they have SIN, then it depends on whether they have made that $5,000, in the last 12 months. If they do, then, they may qualify for CERB, right? So it's like, again, it's like you have to look at all the other requirements as
well. So yes, again, around OW, Mike Scott, I think he's heard your response. Another question, a person on OW who's working at the same time but lost their job due to COVID, are they eligible for CERB or any other benefit, although they're on OW?
If they meet all the criteria, they would be eligible for CERB. Yes, at the same time. And I believe the Ontario government has made some, preliminary kind of announcement about not cutting people off OW, even if they are getting CERB, right? So, I think that they are not going to, do anything different, right? So they should definitely apply for CERB.
Yes. If a newcomer made more than $5,000 back home, can they apply for CERB?
Yes, actually, they count the income overseas. Again, it's like but you know, sort of, it depends on what that income, what is the source of that income, right? So if it's employment income, for sure. But if it's like a investment income, you know, then no, right? So it depends on what that income where that income comes from.
Yeah, so CERB is considered employment income, so you can apply for CERB if you're on OW.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, is CERB considered social assistance in family sponsorships?
Yeah, so that's a question that we have been faced with. I will make the argument that it's not. And the reason why it's not is because it's an employment-based benefit, right? So in a way, it functions more like an EI, right? So it's like the EI benefits from our perspective, and it has not been treated as such as social assistance under the IRPA, right? So for sure, I would argue it's not social assistance. And we have also, I think people have written to, and at least I've signed on, because I've signed on to so many letters, I can't remember all of them. But one of the letters was to the Minister of Immigration to ask him to make sure that CERB and all of these things are not treated as social assistance. And in fact, I think we went a bit further to say that even if people are on social assistance now during the COVID period, that should not be used against them in the future as well. But that, of course, that part is up to the minister and the bureaucrat to decide how they want to interpret. But for sure, I think the way that the social assistance is being applied and interpreted in the past, I would strongly argue that CERB is not social assistance.
Yes. Yeah, and the province here in Ontario have determined that it's an income, not social assistance.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of our listeners missed what you said around the emergency benefit. AFA is called the Ontario Emergency Benefit. Will you just go over that again, please?
Sure. So yeah, so it's a kind of like a emergency benefit just for the COVID-19 kind of situation. So basically, if you live in Ontario, you are in an emergency situation, you can apply for up to 48 days. You get it up to 48 days. The amount of money that you get depends on your situation, but in most cases, you will not get more than what you would have gotten on OW, right? And so to apply, you have to show there's emergency, and they have given some examples on their website. And they include if you have been affected by COVID-19, you are being evicted from your home, you are in or are leaving an abusive relationship, and finally, you are worried about your safety. So it's a very kind of generic kind of thing. It's pretty broad. So I think if you have clients in that situation, like they're they need some extra money, then I think you should try to get them to help apply.
Yeah, and John Mark Robertson has another question around eligibility for CERB and folks who are working in long-term care and having to make the choice of only working in one place and seeing a reduction in their income. Can they apply for CRB?
Yeah, so it depends on whether they meet the criteria, including whether their income is less than $1,000 a month, whether they made $5,000 in the last 12 months or so. Plus, we know that many of them will now get the additional $4 pay, so that may actually bump them up just over $1,000. So who knows, right? Who knows if they will still get CERB? Maybe not, Yeah.
Yeah. Someone wanted you to talk about the bump subsidy for frontline workers. I think they're talking about those essential workers and the $4 per hour increase that's been announced provincially. So I think that's what but it's very specific.
Yeah,
it's not for all frontline workers.
Yeah, so I think what they have actually provided a list, and basically they're looking at essential services in the health sector. And it's not even all essential services, like, because our clinic is considered essential service. I'm not getting any increase in pay. And they have a full list. Maybe what we can do is also add that link to the document and send it out. What do you think after
Yes.
after this?
Yes. And
Yeah.
specific to our sector, IRCC, which is the biggest funder of our sector, is also allowing that $4 increase, whatever the Ontario government is doing, for
Okay.
frontline workers who are working with government-assisted refugees in the shelters or hotels. So
I
those
see.
folks are also eligible and will be getting that. IRCC is allowing
Okay.
your organizations to do that increase.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good.
If a client receives OSAP and applied and received CERB, do they need to return the CERB?
OSAP. So OSAP, it depends. Like OSAP comes in a grant and a loan, right? So it's not an. I don't see any conflict with CRB. Like, it's
Yeah.
like it's not like your, it's not your employment income. Like, so yeah, so it's not an employment income. I don't think so. Whether or not the person can get CERB will depend on whether they meet the CERB eligibility. Because they may be working, right? They may have worked. The student may have worked. Yeah.
Yeah. A permanent resident who is out of the country and can't return because of the COVID lockdown, what happens to their OAS, and what will happen to their OHIP coverage?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think I kind of talked a little bit about it earlier. Maybe I can go through the OAS thing again and talk about OHIP later. So OAS, because you have to maintain your residency in Canada in order to get OAS. I think there is a chance, as I said earlier, that Service Canada may start to audit people because, okay, this is my personal view. I think they target certain communities for audit, like the Chinese and South Asians, like, and maybe a lot of the African Canadian community, I don't know, right? Because I'm seeing the Chinese, Salco is seeing the South Asian clients being audited. So they will look at your history, like, sort of over the last, few years or whatever, have you spent more time outside of Canada? And so let's say if you're stuck outside, and okay, so the other thing is, oftentimes Service Canada will look at whether you spend more than 6 months in a year outside of Canada. That's how they think, right? So if because of COVID you are stuck, you're back home, can't come back, and it's more than 6 months, you come back at some point, Service Canada, and say, well, wait a minute, you were in your country for like 8 months or 9 months. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's very easy to explain. I couldn't come back in because there's no freaking flight. So if they still would not accept your explanation, you can appeal to the Social Security Tribunal. But I would certainly hope that you don't have to do that. If Service Canada is that stupid and start cutting people off because of this, I think we should just go to the media and say, this is so ridiculous, right? So I think OAS, I think I'm less worried. OHIP is the same thing, right? You can't, you have to maintain your residency. But I would also make the same argument with OHIP, and I think it's the same, same thing. Like, I think it will be ridiculous to cut people off OHIP because they couldn't come back due to the pandemic. Particularly for now, OHIP government is exactly doing the opposite. They are extending OHIP to people who were ordinarily not eligible for OHIP. And to say we're now going to deny people who should have eligible for OHIP but for COVID-19 will make them look really stupid as well. So, yeah. I'm not too worried, but again, bureaucrats can be very ridiculous, right? So you never know.
Yeah, and they've also waived the 3 month wait period. So even after you come, and hopefully that will be permanent. So even after
Yeah.
you come back, you wouldn't have to wait. It's the same question. What happens to your HST, GST credit and personal income tax filing for being out of
So
the country beyond
we're
six
out of the
months?
country. Yeah. So I think it's the same. I mean, so assuming that by the time, so right now they're out of the country, they come back to file. So well, they should have already filed their income tax last year for them to get this GST now. And they should continue to get the credit if they are stuck outside of Canada, if they are kind of, you're talking about an ongoing thing, right? If CRA does an audit, and again, I think it will be a question about the residents, right? The residents requirement. I think it will be the same argument to be made, right? Because you're stuck, not because you don't want to come back. You're just stuck outside of Canada because of COVID-19. So I think these questions may come up after the whole thing is over, and certainly maybe you're giving me some idea that we may need to think about what other public legal education materials we should start preparing now for frontline workers. When the economy reopens, people start coming back, then these are some of the things that we may have to be helping clients to deal with. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, we raised this issue yeah, it was a very good question. We raised this issue with Minister Hassan around the GST, HST for folks who are unable to get support to file their income tax. And what we ask is that the GST continue to flow until such time as that income tax is filed for in 2020. Yeah. So that was a very good question. Next question, and I'm paying attention to the time. We have about 10 minutes left. A client came here on a work permit, and his work permit expired, and his employer did not renew his work permit. They then applied to get a permanent residence on H&C grounds. Are they eligible for OW? An H&C application has been submitted.
Yes, they are.
That's clear? Okay.
Yes.
My next question.
Okay. Sorry, assuming they meet the requirement, right? Like income,
yes, they do.
assets. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as they meet the asset requirement.
Yeah. Like all those other things. Yeah.
My client is a student, had just finished his co-op term, going back to college now. Can he apply for student benefits? I'm assuming they mean the CESB.
Right. So they are still a student. They are not graduating. They are not entering postgraduate. So they're just returning to school.
Yes.
Right? Then I don't think so. You're not you're not someone who have just graduated. You're in the middle of your school, so I don't think you are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. So because she is already in the college or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so she's not he or she, right? It's not someone who has just finished post-secondary or
high school.
Well, it depends. Okay, are they going to complete their post-secondary in are they okay? Sorry, they might. If they are ending the post-secondary education in December 2019 or later. Yes, they might. Yes. So and yes, I think the answer is yeah.
Yes. I think the answer is yes as well.
Yeah.
The Ontario government provided, okay, we saw you responded to that. In terms of the Ontario government to 100 and 200, it was only for those on OW and ODSP. I have a client whose admissibility hearing was canceled due to COVID. Any benefit that the client can apply?
So so I'm assuming this person is going through an admissibility hearing because they have a removal order against them, right? And if that's the case, I would argue that the removal order is not enforceable beyond their control, and therefore, if they otherwise meet the income and asset requirement, they should be able to get OW.
Here is a good question that we keep getting. Is it safe for undocumented residents to apply for a benefit like OW?
So I know that people ask me that question, and from my point of view, I always help clients who need the money to apply, because in some way it's like, part of it is like, what choice do they have? Like, you know, it's like they have no money. They have to get something to live, right? And the other thing is also, it's me personally, I have helped clients get OW. I have not had a case where I can say the client is being removed because he got OW. You know what I mean? It's like, I know that OW has, some years ago, we know that OW has an agreement with CIC. At that time, they had no agreement with CBSA. I don't know if they do or not today, but I can say that I have yet to see a case where a client applied for OW and then suddenly CBSA knock on the door. I've never seen that. But at the same time, of course, a lot of the clients who are non-status, who, I mean, at some point or later, they will come to the attention of CBSA, whether or not they are on OW. So for me, my focus is on how do you address their immediate need. And then if they comes to the attention of CBSA, then we deal with it at that point, right? So that's how I deal with it, right? Yeah.
Another one around seniors, a permanent resident senior, again, stuck outside of Canada. Are they eligible to get old age security? OAS.
So I think I answered that question. Like, you know, it's like if you have already applied or you're already on it, I think you should continue to get it. But if you're not in Canada right now, I think it's more difficult for you to, I mean, you could try to, can you even apply OAS online? I don't know the answer to that question. Can you apply OAS online? Yeah. I don't think, I think you will have a harder time applying and getting OAS now.
If you're outside the country, yes.
Yeah, because they will question whether you're a resident of Canada.
Yeah, so this question is very technical. Is the government still using the May 15th deadline to decide whether the client should get EI or CERB?
March 15th. Will you say March 15th or May? Like March 15th is the start date.
March 15th is the start date, but I think there was a discussion that was happening sometime in early April about using May 15th for people to decide whether or not they should apply to EI or to or to CERB.
Right. I think that was still the case, but at the same time, however, we also found out that whether or not you get through EI or CERB also depends on which portal that you apply through.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that timeline is really that hard deadline, as opposed to really the method by which you apply sometimes would determine which one you get first.
Yeah, so whether or not you apply through the CRA portal or through Service Canada.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Stanley, I know I'm not reading out the whole question because it's a bit paying attention to the time, and we have a number of other questions. If the person applied for CERB in July 2020, when will their eligibility end? So if they apply in 2 months from now.
Right. So the whole thing is for 16 weeks. It starts, okay.
March 15th.
March 15th. The first period is ending April 6th or something like that. Somebody has to do the calculation. So it just add 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, right?
But
So
I think the question is, so my understanding is that if you apply, whenever you apply, it's 16 weeks. They'll
no,
pay
no,
you
no,
16
no,
weeks. Ah,
no,
okay.
no. It's like that whole period is from March 15th to whatever the 16 weeks end. So, okay, there are two possibilities with that question, right? Because even if you apply in July, you may be applying retroactively, right? Because you have until October 2nd to apply. So someone may decided to delay the applications until July, but retroactive back to March. That's one possibility. But if they're saying that they only become eligible in July, then it will be whatever weeks that's a number of weeks that's left in that 16 weeks period.
Oh, so October is a
You know
cutoff
what I
time.
mean? So yes, like cutoff in terms of the period within which you will get CRB, but you can apply after August until October, it retroactively back to those 16 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Hope that was clear. Sorry, there's another EI question. Okay. Any possibility for some people they could get CERB and CESB together? And if they do get CESB and CERB together, will CRA ask them to repay one of them back?
So one of the basic eligibility for CESB is that you are not eligible for CERB. So you can't get both at the same time. If you somehow get both at the same time, CRA will ask you to pay back one of them.
Okay.
So I guess it's better to pay back CESB than CERB, because if you are getting CESB and you have no dependent, you only get $12,050, whereas you get CERB and that's like $2,000, right? So it's better not to get CESB if you are eligible for CERB. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And the last question, a client who was working part-time, got COVID, was tested positive for COVID, is now feeling better. So was in quarantine for 20 days, was now feeling better, but has not returned to work because he lives with his father who is over 65 and have preconditions. Will he qualify for CERB?
I would think so if they qualify, if they are, if they are otherwise eligible, right? And I think that's meant for that kind of situation, right? So if they have worked, make more than 5,000 income last year, they either lost, well, I mean, in this case, he lost his job because of COVID. Like, he was not able to work because of COVID. So yeah, so he should get served, yeah.
Thank you, Avvy. And so thank you so very much. For folks, we know we didn't get to all of your questions. Please check out the links that we've sent you. If you haven't been able to download it, we will send it out by email. We will not be sharing the recording. The recording is for internal purposes only, but we will try to, hopefully you'll be able to get most of your questions answered through the links and the documents that we will provide. Thank you so much, Avvy. This has been very, very informative. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Please fill out the short survey that will be coming out to you as participants. Have a wonderful, wonderful Friday and a wonderful long weekend. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.